One was four of us.
My name is Ed Boone. I'm co-designer and programmer.
My name's Dan Forden, and I do sound and music.
John Vogel, background special effects.
John Tobias, and co-designer and lead artist.
There was other sort of support staff, but that had to do more with like the cabinet and the wiring.
A team being composed of, I think, 4, 5, 6 people was not uncommon.
You were in one of two categories, programmer or artist, and that was basically it. Everything felt like, being in a rock band or something, just a very few number of guys. He's guitar, he's drum, he's, we all had our own jobs to do, and, we'd fight with each other, and we'd hang out with each other and go see movies with each other and stuff. And
certainly when I started working on Smash TV, it was myself, Mark Turmel, and I think there was maybe one other programmer at the time, and then Eugene Jarvis eventually came on.
Partly it was just the simplicity of the games of that era. 8-bit, pixel art, that a lot of the animation was just done with graph paper. Say Defender, all the animations of that game could be done in a week.
A lot of people think that, somebody up high says you're going to make a fighting game and you're going to call it Mortal Kombat and it's going to look like this, and then we go, okay, and do it. That's not how it worked at all.
It's a bit of the Wild West. There wasn't rules. There wasn't any, well, this is how you make a video game. Everybody made it differently. And as long as cool new stuff was showing up on your screen every once in a while, management would, peek their head in. Oh, you got fatalities going. Good job. And then they'd leave and you just continue with it.
It was so pure, you didn't have to, have a committee meeting every time you wanted to add a feature. And
things were so loose back then, there wasn't really a workflow. It was like, hey, we need to get something done. Just do it.
It was just like, yeah, let's try this out, and see if it works.
And I think maybe a part of it was also that I wasn't conscious of might have been to keep costs down. I know what my salary was at the time. I don't know what Ed's salary was, but I have to believe that the development of MK in terms of the cost of us had to have been, I don't know, not much. And I remember at the end of my first year working at Midway, I was doing my taxes. My dad was helping me do my taxes. When I started at Williams, I was making $19,000 a year. He knew the hours I was putting in, and we did the math, and I was making probably $2 an hour is what I was making working at Williams, and I didn't care. I loved the work so much.
I know it's not a popular topic, but the overnighters and the going out for breakfast, nobody told us to do that. Nobody said stay till midnight tonight. If anything, they were, you guys are burning yourselves out and you gotta take it easy or something. So
because of the schedules and because of how few people there were, and we were all playing multiple roles, wore multiple hats, that there was just too much work. And it wasn't like we were being made to do this. It was an art, it was a craft, and it was a labor of love. So we were so passionate that we spent, all of our waking hours and our sleeping hours in the studio.
Some people look back and they go, oh, that was that was abuse or something like that. It's like, no, we were guys in our 20s who were motivated to do something cool. You were working on Liu Kang's, flying kick, and it was feeling good, and you wanted to keep perfecting it, and it was my obsession. It was like being paid to do a hobby. If a band is up all night learning a song, they want to nail it, and it's the exact same thing. It's completely self-motivated.
Back then, it was nothing but fun. It was just, working there was just hilarious. The secret sauce was basically we were just a bunch of knuckleheads doing whatever we wanted, and we were happy. My job on MK1 was basically to do backgrounds. Like John would do characters and I would do the backgrounds. Things were very simple back then, like.
One more time.
He would choose which frames he wanted to use and then cut the background away from the characters, and that was his job,
Literally after we shot the footage, I think maybe that night or the next day, I started stripping frames right away. We did a lot of playing around with lighting. We were just sort of discovering. I think we probably taped more than we needed just to make sure that we got enough coverage.
I remember after the Sonya's leg grab, having to say something along the lines of, you know, trust us, it's going to be really cool. The image was clear in my head. Sometimes we forget that it's not inside everybody's head.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, now once from the very middle, all you have to do is just land right there.
Can you do that, or is that
The beginning part.
She should do it from the stance.
Right.
We were trying to get a film-like quality, but we wanted to just amp it up a little bit. And once we realized that pumping up colors really attracted people to our games, that was, you know, also our trademark.
A lot of the character design that I did for Mortal Kombat was based on the limitations of the hardware. So I knew that we had a limited color palette that we could work with. I knew that you know, the pixel resolution kind of restricted what we were capable of doing. So bold colors, simple shapes would distinguish one character from another would be important. And I knew that a color palette that would distinguish one character from another was also important. And I was careful not to repeat those things.
You know, the thing about the ninjas was, you know, the nature of them. As you know, there were palette swaps of each other. It was all to save memory. You know, it was a very precious thing in our arcade games. And so Scorpion and Sub-Zero, they were the same character with different colors. You know, John wrote this amazing backstory behind them, making them enemies, and that added to the mystique of the characters.
In one of the pages of my notebook, I had scribbled, okay, here are the characters and here are their archetypes. I knew that, well, we need a hero, we need a villain, we need a sidekick, we need all these things. I was a big Joseph Campbell fan. I had read his books and I was aware of the hero's journey and the character archetypes that he had sort of outlined. I thought, okay, well, if we could tell implicit story through character archetypes, the players might sort of almost subconsciously relate to the characters in a particular way. So that played a part in sort of the character choices we made. I don't recall exactly why we did some characters and not others. I know that we were limited with the number of characters we could do. A few of them I remember not using. One of them was a character called Minamoto Yoshitsune. It was based on a Japanese mythological character. And another one was called Rakuro, who was based on, I think, a Japanese mythological beasts. Those two characters didn't make it in. I think part of it was because the names became a big deal for us. It's like, you know, how does this name roll off the tongue? You know, if a name was too long, we knew it was going to be difficult to display on the health meters. It was usually silly things like that would play a part in some of the choices we made.
Most of the characters' names came from John Tobias. A couple of the characters, he didn't have a name written down for them. He had Ninja 1 and Ninja 2. I was a little bit more of like a simple superhero mindset, so I started calling them Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Those simple names were kind of like my influence, but the authentic, cool names, Goro, Shang Tsung, Kano, Raiden, you know, that was John's deal.
For Mortal Kombat 1, there wasn't a lot in the way of concept art that we did. Conceptualization was just limited to just scribblings in a notepad.
I don't remember many, if any, drawings of backgrounds, but there may have been some. I just remember kind of like I said, just winging it and doing whatever. Like John would say, I'd like a dungeon or something, and that became Goro's lair, you know. I had already learned how to do the parallax scrolling stuff from Terminator 2, so that worked out well with doing parallax stuff for Mortal Kombat as well. I know there was one specific background that he wanted, and that was with statues, the statue background. Just make something look cool. That was basically the rule. I went to Chinatown, and just to get references and stuff, there would be, you know, an interesting vase, and I would video that vase, and then I use that, and that's Shang Tsung's one of Shang Tsung's thrones is like the vase, you know. There's the dragon that was sitting on Ken Fedesna's desk. I just said, hey, can I video that? And he's like, cool. So I grabbed it off his desk, took it to my office, and grabbed it. That's like in one of the backgrounds, and there's two of them. And then there's the pagoda in Chinatown that I videoed that and used that as the courtyard, I guess we call it. I think Shang Tsung is also in another chair, and it's that big roof thing. That's from Chicago. That's from Chinatown. So sometimes it meant opening a book and going, oh, that's a cool Chinese thing. Get the camera, take video of it, and use that. There are things from books in Mortal Kombat 1. I just went out and grabbed stuff. What looks cool? Kind of a guerrilla artsy sort of way. It wasn't really planned all that much back then.
One of the really cool things about Mortal Kombat and about some of the really great games, if you have a really great winning concept, often, they got that game running in like a month. A lot of modern games, it seems like they spend all their time in this graphical wilderness trying to get everything looking so cool, and then they've got like 3 weeks left to figure out what the game is.
We had a very fast iteration. I would get art from John, we put it in, and an hour later, we were playing it.
Raiden wins.
The first time you play it, you just go, this is incredible. You knew you were on the right course.
Ed was just eager to have people in and give him feedback on stuff.
A lot of times it was just someone you'd have someone in your office to look at something and they go, hey, what about this? And then maybe that's a good idea.
Ideas could come and be turned into reality in the same day.
Yeah, in fact, I remember we would record a little bit of footage.
Okay, one more time. All right, that's good.
And it wasn't until Ed actually got the frames and could get them in the game, not until that point would we know that we were making the right choices.
When we were making this game, Street Fighter II was the big rage, and I was a huge admirer of that game. At the same time, I felt like there was a little bit more ceiling room in terms of how outrageous you can get with the moves. We wanted characters using magic, disappearing, teleporting, doing all these kind of unpredictable things. And a lot of the moves were constructed from kind of almost like scraps. Kano's ball was from his flipping animation. Scorpion's teleport was from his jump punch animation.
Scorpion throwing a spear and pulling somebody in,
It was something that I remember I thought of that was just an outrageous move that wasn't seen in any other fighting game.
Right, although we used to try to do the wind up and throw was usually like 5 frames maybe. Like if you went like
yeah, something like that.
It was one of those spur of the moment, inspirational ideas that ended up becoming like very signature, very iconic to Mortal Kombat.
The way he was implementing them was so interesting because he uses the frames of animation, and he was, as a programmer, would move them around to do things. Like he would define like how things animated across the screen.
When we did the Liu Kang flying kick, you got to stop him. Once he makes contact, then it'll make the impact feel like it's a lot more intense and more forceful. Iterating again and again on how important it is that we get the timing of all these things correct.
Other than how John would define what the actual frames of animation were, Ed defined how things moved around.
There's little nuances that are put into the game that a lot of players don't identify, but they just know that it feels good, and they're not sure why.
I think that was a hard lesson to learn back in the day of, hey, I want this animation to be really smooth, and I want it to be like 100 frames. And it's like, no, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. And it has to feel good.
Like, it's got to have impact. Impact and drama, that's what people are going to respond to.
get over here. You know, the uppercut was such a big, ridiculous reaction.
Getting the animation of the character launching them into the air, putting the blood on it, being knocked down, and
they shake the screen.
And the sound call that Dan Forden did.
It's like, no, we need like a really big sound for a hit. It's like, okay, so I made like a really big sound for a hit. The scream of the attacker, the victim, you know, yelling as he flies away. Put all that stuff together, it's like, boom. It's like, oh my God.
I remember we were just walking around just doing uppercuts again and again and going, you know, God, that feels so good, that feels so good.
That's how people knew when something was cool in any game. People were gonna be like, holy smokes. And now you know you have something. And then, so that, and then the fatality.
Like, fatalities were the big thing that made us a hit.
Raiden wins.
Street Fighter had this feature which I loved and hated at the same time. You can get your opponent dizzy. I loved the fact when I was the aggressor and saw my opponent dizzy, you're almost like salivating at this free hit that you get. And then I hated the idea of being the victim. I put the dizzy feature at the end of the fight. You just get like one last hit. And everybody would do an uppercut as your kind of like payoff. We had a feature that we had dropped in the game where Shang Tsung, when he would defeat you, he would take a sword out and he would like cut your head off. And we weren't going to use it because we were out of space, but we still had the animations of all the characters falling to their knees without a head. One day I just kind of piecemealed the idea of Johnny Cage uppercutting the opponent with his uppercut animation and then using the animations of the character with his head, you know, cut off.
Johnny Cage wins. Flawless victory fatality.
I showed it to John, I showed it to the rest of the team, and everybody lost their mind, and we have to do this. The fact that we gave the players the ability to actually perform this kind of death blow, this kind of killing move, was really the birth of that idea. Some people were kind of like saying, I don't think we can get away with, you know, letting the player kill the other player. So we showed it to management, and they loved it.
I was surprised that we could include the level of you know, blood spattering around that we did. But of course, you know, when I was working on Mortal Kombat, I had just come from Smash TV and Total Carnage. And so, you know, the levels of blood spattering around the screen wasn't new to me.
From that point on, it was, okay, now we got to think of fatalities for all the characters. Some of the later characters, we actually grabbed animations of them, you know, Kano ripping the heart out, Sonya doing the kiss of death and all that. The spine rip was a suggestion from John Tobias, referencing the movie Predator, and he said, why don't we do what they did in Predator where you pull the head out?
It's just like, oh, it was just like, oh my God.
And I remember saying, you know, I think that's probably crossing the line. We can't do it. Again, once we mocked it up, put it into the game, you know, there was no turning back. Everybody was just losing their mind.
And if anything, I felt like there was a bit of encouragement coming from other folks, you know, around the office, just because of the excitement that it drew from the players.
Everybody had to see this. No one had ever seen somebody removing someone's spinal cord. It really, it's interesting. It made it so much more emotional. It just like, you're just like, yeah! You know, it's almost like that barbaric, primal emotion, like, yeah! You know, like,
we never performance captured a fatality for Liu Kang. But there were some animations that we had not used. One of them was this really cool cartwheel kick.
Whoa. Yeah, let's grab that again, even if we don't use it. Right. We'll use it someplace.
We were both like, wow, we'll find a place for that. When it came time to do Liu Kang's fatality, we just spliced on the uppercut animation at the end of it, And it wasn't disgusting, it wasn't gross, it wasn't shocking.
Liu Kang wins.
And we just kind of reasoned with ourselves to say, well, Liu Kang's the hero. He's a Shaolin monk. He's peaceful. Heroes don't kill people, so he just gave him a big uppercut. The process of adding fatalities into the game created so much energy in the whole studio in terms of their excitement for the game that we knew there was no backing out of it at that point.
Again, you're in a very small screen environment. You really have to exaggerate things. You have to make it just outrageous.
Scorpion wins.
Found the Holy Grail. It's like hitting the lottery. You know, it was something that we knew was going to be a signature part of Mortal Kombat.
I always judge a great game by how loud players get when they play. You yell at your friends and laugh, and the volume level is a measure of a good game for me.
And like I said, it was just fun and it was happy, and that may be the secret sauce.
Again, when you see people playing the game and they're losing their minds and they're reacting to it, there's your fuel. Yeah. There's your fuel for the next, for the next year to do it. So.
Who put the K in Kombat?
I did. I put the K in Kombat. I didn't come up with a name, but the K. This is my story. This is my memory, anyway.
I came up with Mortal and the K instead of a C.
Yeah, well, you know what's going to happen? We're going to come up with all the names. We're all going to like them, and Ed's going to hate every one of them. Why? DEFCON is overused. Where? Everywhere. I've heard that so many times.
Yeah, every time you watch War Games.
Ed's probably right behind me, isn't he? Like, oh, no, you didn't.
I think there's different stories going on. This is my recollection. It's been 30 years. We had a bunch of words written on a grease board.
We didn't have a name, so there was a bunch of possibilities, and one of them was Mortal Kombat.
Kombat was written, I don't know if it had a K at the time, but Steve Ritchie, he said the words, "What about Mortal Kombat?"
They had Kombat on their whiteboard, but they were all a lot younger than me, and I'm not sure they ever heard of the phrase, "they fought in Mortal Kombat," meaning somebody's gonna die. It is what this game is about. It's Mortal Kombat.
And when he said that, from my perspective, it was like, whoa, there's the name right there. But I don't remember. Do you remember where the K came from?
Yeah, so, what I remember was that. And then I think we went to legal with that name, Mortal Kombat, with a C. And they came back and said no, because they couldn't trademark it. Because it was, I guess, a common term. I remember it was John Vogel,
right,
who wrote the K.
Yeah, yeah.
And in fact, he might have done that before that conversation with the legal department.
As a joke, I was in the room with Ed, and as a joke, I changed the C to a K, and we were like laughing about it. Ha ha ha, that'd be funny. Oh, it's so stupid. And then so I said, all right, and I was putting it back to a C, and he goes, no, leave it. Just leave the K. And so that's my memory as how it happened.
No, it was me, because the C was like, I don't know, just look cooler with the K. That's my thoughts.
And then I think we went back to legal and said, what about if it has a K? And then they went away, and then they came back and said, yes, you can. If you put a K on it, we can trademark it.
Actually, John Vogel's involvement does ring a bell for me.
I don't think I was enamored with the K. I thought it was goofy. And then when the realization hit that, well, if we change it with a K, we can use Mortal Kombat, it's like, oh, damn it. We're going to give it, I think Vogel was right.
Yeah.
So whether you hate me or love me for it, now C's are now K's.
This is the sound area. This is where they make all the sounds for the games.
I am an audio director here at NetherRealm. The sound guy, gotta get the voices in.
Dan shows you cool stuff every couple of days. He just comes in and you go, great, this is awesome.
And he's a lot like Ed, where I just have this confidence that, he's going to go away and come back with something spectacular.
That's the Johnny Cage Nut Crunch, I believe. Didn't someone make a candy bar, Johnny Cage Nut Crunch bar?
Again, we didn't know what we were doing, so it's just, okay, it's a fighting game. A lot of yelling, a lot of pain. You know, I don't think we had enough memory to record, okay, this is Scorpion's voice, this is Sub-Zero. So we just, like the men, we just mixed and matched. And I think Sonya was the only female in the first one. So we had, obviously, a female voice for that, and that was hers. But the rest of them, I think, would just be shared. We'd just get the talent, which was just people around the studio. It's not like we were hiring people to come in and do this.
We recorded me as the announcer, as Shang Tsung. You know, Liu Kang wins. Finish him.
Liu Kang wins. Fatality.
You know, fatality. All of those kind of classic sound calls was me, because we didn't have somebody with a better voice. Later on, we found Steve Ritchie, who had a much better voice in terms of like an announcer.
Baraka wins. Flawless victory. Fatality.
I did a terrible Bruce Lee impersonation for Liu Kang. I think I did a yell for Kano.
Kano wins.
But I was also the voice of Scorpion, you know, yelling, "Get over here."
Get over here! Excellent. Come here!
I had worked with Dan Forden for many years at the time. I remember there was another sound guy who thought that was the stupidest thing in the world. And it kind of was, you know. Why would a ninja, you know, yell, "Get over here"? That's such like an American kind of thing.
Scorpion wins.
The idea was, again, the outrageous presentation. We really wanted to have, you know, just yelling and loudness in general into the game. From something that became with such silly roots and beginnings, you can't imagine Scorpion not having the "Get over here."
Ed would get me, this is back in the days of VHS, right? He would get me a playthrough of the background that I'd be working on. These are the instruments that I have, and look at the background, trying to think of like, well, what makes sense musically for this.
You try to imagine the action of playing the game and what the music's gonna do to like get you revved up.
Ever since, I don't know, the 70s, early 70s even, but always liked progressive rock a lot. So a friend of mine turned me on to King Crimson in high school, and that's been like a love of mine ever since. And so there's no doubt that there's a lot of King Crimson influence in the Mortal Kombat music that I wrote over the years. You know, like the very first tune, it's a melody in a diminished scale, harmonized at the fifth. So that sounds like a lot of King Crimson stuff. I think they pretty much liked everything I did. I don't remember doing over too many things. Now and then there would be like, you know, maybe you should try this instead of that, and some sort of corrective feedback. But for the most part, it's just we were just kind of making it up as we went along.
This was our first game that we were doing kind of as the leaders of the games. You know, Mark Trammell was the kind of leader of the Smash TV team, and Eugene was kind of the leader of the High Impact team, along with John Newcomer. And so this was kind of like our first solo project.
I think they have complementary skill sets.
We're symbiotic in a way. Certainly in the first few games, it was just like we just knew what the other person was looking for. And I don't know that we ever, I mean, if we had an argument, it certainly wasn't about the work that we were doing. We just seemed to know what the other person was looking for.
They worked well because they trusted each other's talents enough to say, okay, yeah, you know what you're talking about. Ed took care of all the programming. John took care of all the art.
They just had this unsaid, hey, you know, it'd be fun. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's do it.
Working with Ed, one of his great strengths were just his focus, I think, and his ability to just grind and get things done. Ed, who was the sole programmer to create that game, in hindsight, was incredible.
For one programmer to do all those games is pretty amazing. And
his door is always open. He wants to hear new ideas. He's dangerously funny, where it just busts me up at least once a day.
He would just crack us up all the time, just his jokes, and he made it easy to work the long hours.
John is a really good storyteller. John has a history in as a comic book artist. So I think that probably contributed to his ability to tell a compact story. The only story we had was a little paragraph that would play underneath the character doing a kata, but that was enough to really intrigue players.
You really gave a shit about it because of the backstory, because about the whole mythology that John Tobias had created. You know, maybe not unlike WWF or something, almost like Star Wars in martial arts.
The first game truly was like an expression of just who we were at the time. You know, we were in our early 20s, the stuff that we consumed growing up as kids, and we just threw it all into the game. There was nobody telling us what to do, how to do it.
I think it was a great partnership, and I think, you know, what can you say? Success beyond belief.